Welcome to this episode of the Biology of Trauma podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Aimie. How do we restore the gut microbiome that has been affected by trauma, stress, and nervous system dysregulation? In this episode, we'll focus on how we can get our gut and nervous system working together in health, balance, and regulation after getting thrown off by the stress and trauma they carry. Steven Wright is my guest for this episode. Because of his story and life experience with trauma, stress, and nervous system dysregulation since infancy affecting his gut, he has had to learn solutions to fight for his health. He is truly a health engineer that seeks to understand nervous system and gut connection and its solutions. He has founded a business based on what he has learned. And I really wanted to have Steven on because he really has had to go to a deeper level than most will ever need to go in order to find balance and health for his gut and nervous system. Being born with a birth defect that resulted in something called visceral hypersensitivity. Visceral meaning gut, and hypersensitive meaning he feels everything to the nth degree. He has experienced anxiety, panic attacks, and depression, obesity, and IBS, and is here to share his story and what he learned that can help us with our gut and nervous system connection. In this episode, you will learn how early life experiences program survival mechanisms into our nervous system, how those survival programs become health dysfunctions, the 3 nutrients that are powerhouses for the gut nervous system connection, the optimal ways, types, and dosages for the body to absorb those supplements properly, and why you still may be struggling with gut issues despite a clean diet, and how to choose a properly functioning digestive enzyme. I am so very excited for this episode. Let's get started. What is the experience that you had where you had to learn that this is the body I have, and thus this is the journey that I need to go on? What happened?
That is like 5 hours, so I'll give you an abridged version. I was born with a birth defect. I almost didn't make it. My intestines were pinched up down there with some other stuff. And luckily I'm here due to modern medicine. But I also grew up in the antibiotics are for everything age. And so I had years and years of antibiotics for my acne. I grew up luckily in a way working class poor. So we didn't eat out a lot. We actually ate a lot of just meats, fruits, and potatoes. And so, I had a very mixed bag, but I'm what I consider a from birther, meaning I don't recall a time in my history in which I had ideal health or was free of health challenges. And those range from mental health, deep depression episodes, high anxiety, panic attacks. I was 40 to 50 pounds heavier than you see me now, cystic acne, exercise-induced asthma, gout-like symptoms, maybe gout, like all kinds of things that also include intense bloating and IBS, which is where my focus ended up being after college. There's a type of IBS called visceral hypersensitivity. And if you have it, you are very aware of it. It feels like knives in your gut if you get too much gas production. And that's what the subtype I had developed by the time I was out of college. And it didn't matter if I ate chicken and salad, or if I had burgers and beers or a deep dish pizza, the result was always the same: extreme gas production and extreme pain. And I would just literally load up spreadsheets. I was in a high rise in downtown Chicago at the time. I'd load up spreadsheets and I'd just fart because there was nothing else for me to do. I couldn't concentrate. I had so much pain. And I don't blame them, but it did happen. My coworkers reported me as the stinky guy in the office. And one day my boss called me in on a Friday afternoon and he said, look, if you want to keep this job, you're the smelly guy. You got to get this figured out. And it wasn't that I wasn't already working out for an hour a day. I was trying to lose weight, which is why I was eating a lot of salad and chicken. It wasn't that I hadn't already looked into a few doctors. I had, but nothing really had come of it. And so that was finally like the 4x4 to the face. I'm a little stubborn, maybe a lot. And so that was my livelihood is now on the line. Let's try to fix this. And so again, I went to all the Western medical professions, and it was basically just, you have IBS, you have a family history of IBS, suck it up, Metamucil, whole grains. This is 2009. We were not where we are now. At least they did check me for celiac, which I didn't have. But I was missing dates, on the toilet. I was up all night. And luckily, I had a buddy from college who did have celiac disease, who did not get help from the gluten-free diet and had to go on a more elimination diet called the specific carbohydrate diet. And if you have these types of problems, you typically have like a buddy or a friend that you share your dark times with. And he was mine. And so one day I called him. He's like, dude, you got to do this diet, man. You got to change your life, change your diet. And I was so resistant because I had no cooking skills at the time. But I did, and immediately saw like 50% reduction in the pain in the first week. And then that just flipped on a light bulb in me, which is that I have a lot more power and capacity, and fuck these doctors. I can figure this out. I can't be the only one in the whole world of people that has had these issues and decided that they wanted to not have these issues. And if I could just find a few people and try everything they tried, I could reverse engineer my own issues, because that's a lot of what we do in engineering college is reverse engineering things. Most of the problems in the world have already been solved. I'm definitely not Elon or some of the really smart folks. The rest of us, regular engineers, we just reverse engineer stuff that's already been done. And so I just started to apply that and immediately found stomach acid support and other supplements that immediately made improvements. And it just became this snowball of empowerment and then rage against the system that I felt like let me down, and a desire to get the message out there. And then it's gone through all these iterations of training with functional medicine and Dan Kalish and learning about, parasites and hormone and the fact that I had these 7 concussions and had these neurotransmitter imbalances and blah, 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 like a long history of 6 or 7 years in the functional medicine, integrative medicine, where I bought everything. I was at the beginning, thousands of dollars in debt on credit cards, getting the tests and doing the $500 a month in supplements. And then in a few years later, I was the practitioner giving those protocols, looking at stool tests and all the other tests. And then a few years after that, I said, fuck it, I'm done. I don't believe in this. I was still having visceral hypersensitivity, even though I had everybody on speed dial. I could call anybody. You name them, I could call them. I had done all the tests, and I was markedly better, like not even the same zip code or same universe better, but I was unsatisfied with the fact that I would have these random attacks. They felt random. I would later learn they're not so random. And so that's when I walked away, like in 2015, from nutrition and functional medicine, and just opened the Pandora's box of my emotions and my feelings and my traumas and my childhood, and worked that for a while, which again, I have a insane ability just to dive in. Like if you tell me that this acai berry will heal me, I will guzzle that stuff and buy it all. If you tell me it's neurofeedback, if you tell me it's somatic body work, if you tell me it's massage, I'll get 3 a week. So I have done a ridiculous amount of neurofeedback. I've tried almost every psychedelic under supervision of guided professionals. I've tried the regular workshops, the longer workshops, the meditation retreats, and they all taught me a lot of things. But in the end, what I found was I had to come back together, and I had to bring the physical aspect as well as the stuff I learned from the walkabout into emotions and trauma and bodies and nervous systems.
You're reminding me so much of my own journey, Steven, where it came in layers, and I would discover one thing, right? The first thing I discovered was just functional medicine, because conventional medicine didn't have any answer for my fatigue and autoimmunity. And so I discovered functional medicine, and oh my goodness, right? Like this is a godsend. And then that became not enough. And I was like, oh shoot. And then the next thing came. Oh, I've got brain inflammation. Oh, why didn't anybody tell me? Okay, so now let me go down that rabbit hole. And then I did, and saw some improvement, but then it was like, we're still not there. Oh, I've got these biochemical imbalances. Why didn't anybody tell me? Okay, I'll address those. And it just was, it never came as a whole package for me. And it sounded like the same thing for you. It was just one thing at a time. And we keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and learning the different things that our body needs for us to support and address it in order for us to get there. So at some point, it sounds like you really came to understand the role of the nervous system, that it's not just the diet. It's not just the toxins. It's oh, it's my nervous system. And you made reference to that when you found out that, oh, these episodes are actually not as random as I thought they were. Tell me how you came to understand the deep connection between the nervous system and your gut health symptoms.
I would say the awakening moment for me was a high dose guided MDMA journey. And so this is a 101 shaman led higher dose MDMA journey, solo, blindfolded. So, I did a bunch of journaling and put a blindfold on. I had a pillow. And I would say 6.5, 7 hours later of a lot of experiences, almost 50 to 60% of that random visceral hypersensitivity never came back. It was gone immediately in one afternoon and one integration session around that. And that was earlier on in the experiences for me. And I was really just like, holy cow. That, started to really pique my interest because I had done a lot of talk therapy at that point. I had done some somatic experiencing, which I had some profound expects. I had already done a meditation retreat for 10 days. I had done some neurofeedback, like, whatever, like some $10,000 package that didn't work. I tried a lot of those things already, but then something happened where I didn't leave the room. I experienced a bunch of experiences. I cried a lot of cries and I felt a lot of feels. And then boom, everything thereafter was different. And that was kind of my like, wow moment of, okay, not only is all the stuff I'd already done not necessarily bad, it just wasn't the thing that I needed, but also now I'm much more excited to continue to go down these various rabbit holes and try to understand like you said, just the baseline status of my nervous system and how it, like precognition, every day I wake up, I'm sort of already at a state of heightened sensitivity and arousal that sets me up to not digest no matter what I choose. And if I could change pre everything, how I just arose from the bed, without any of my doing, if I could change how I just operated, clearly that would change everything. And so that was like my big moment that kept me going.
And I think about your birth and your early life experience and how that really programmed in fear and survival into your nervous system from the very beginning. And so then living through that for decades, I'm not surprised that things started to really get worse in college with the visceral hypersensitivity. And then this experience where it really will come down to the nervous system then, because that's where that early life programming happened. And the more that you can create that background safety will help the symptoms. And when you're mentioning even just waking up in a state of stress, waking up with that background hypervigilance, that's how programmed our nervous system can be from early life, where we had no control over our early life. You had no control over your intestines being pinched off when you were born, nor no control over that. And yet our body adapts, our nervous system adapts, and it has tried to hold on to that memory of we can never relax. We are always having to survive in order to try to help us. And you being able to recognize this is what's going on. This is part of what created this and is driving this. And so I really need to learn how to bring a sense of safety to my nervous system if I really want to have the life that I want to have.
Yeah, I mean, and they all kind of, the framing, I learned about that stuff from talk therapy and from, doing some ACEs work and some other thing. I was like, oh, shoot, I do have some things that like other people report that that's a problem or that has an impact anyways. And so I think they all kind of help, right? They all help you make a picture of like cognitively, this is what's happening. Emotionally, oh, look at that. I have like way more emotions than my wife does. Like my peaks and valleys are like very feminine. They're extreme. They're intense compared to hers. I don't know how to say it in the proper ways, but I'm very sensitive and I'm very emotional. And I made that wrong. I'm a man. I'm maybe not supposed to be that way, especially if you grew up in the Midwest. And so just learning about these various parts of just how I'm wired, and then just accepting that that is me. And then, like you said, unwinding some of that doing, and what sort of practices for me allow me to be much more okay with the world and with me, I think was a massive change. And I can talk about a few more if you want, but I think the beautiful thing was I had built this life that I was in I had like an hour and a half in the morning, and I was doing, I was listening to these awesome tracks on the phone, and I had all these great journaling practices and just meditation, and then vibing with my dog. And then my work schedule was pretty compressed at the time, so it wasn't a lot of stress. And then life just took another, 4x4 to my face a few years later. And that's when I realized, oh, shoot, you can't just, you can't just rely on all these specific practices in the specific order in order to have a good day, because that also is not abundance. That's actually its own little prison. And that's where I kind of had to come full circle with the bringing back in the physiological stuff with the practices, and try to figure out, how do I do life under intense stress?
You've been able to figure out a lot. You've been able to reverse engineer a lot. So I know that has even led to the specific products that you've developed, because you've figured out what the nervous system really needs and benefits from in your experience. So walk me through the timeline of how you started to find that GABA was really helpful for your nervous system, and theanine, and even then leading to the development of a cream rather than a capsule. Walk me through that process.
Yeah. Well, I think you mentioned something in the beginning, which is like, if you have a gut, you've had a gut problem. I don't think I've ever heard it put exactly that way. And I've done hundreds of these, and that's perfect, because it is one and the same. Like, the research is now coming out that an intense trauma event will shift your microbiome, potentially irreversible. Well, if you don't intervene, it'll be shifted, but it can be reversed with interventions. Ongoing daily stresses can shift the microbiome, and that microbiome is really, in my opinion, a hippie community. And I mean that in the best sense of the hippie communities. In a great hippie community, somebody's got to be farming, someone's cooking, someone's watching the kids, someone's repairing the buildings, someone's on security, someone's probably doing finance. Like, it takes a village to really do that. And the microbiome is exactly the same. The reason why people say you need diversity is because all these species are, some people are breaking down the food and then passing off a slightly broken down piece of food to another group. And then that group makes a product that ends up being absolutely essential to our bodies. And without it, it's linked to every state of disease known to mankind. And so it can't do that last little part until the other parts of the community do their parts. And so it's this beautiful mixture. And that organ, we know that if you're willing to go outside in the morning and see some sunlight, and maybe just breathe and hug yourself, do some of your practices about letting go, that your microbiome will improve. If you're willing to do 10,000 steps and get some exercise, your microbiome will improve. And so there's lots of lifestyle choices. If you have a dog, if you have a garden, you will have a better microbiome. You'll have better, and then that healthier microbiome is associated with less anxiety, less depression, less panic attacks, less neuro anything. But that's kind of like it's the long-term game plan of like healing. But when you're already in a deficit and you're not feeling super safe and secure, or your gut is a wreck, that's what happened. All my stuff came back. My wife's mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. My soon-to-be wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. My business partner walked away from the business at the time. And like life just, all in 9 months, everything came back. And so I went to my cabinet, and I keep a pharmacy. Like, literally, you asked, why do I do this? It's like, I don't know what else to do. I order shit from everywhere, Russia, Asia. I don't care. I'm not, give me give me your herbal remedy for anything and I will try it, or your pharmaceutical option, I will try that as well. And so I love having a pharmacy. And so I went to it, and, the bloating was back. All the food sensitivities were back. The anxiety, mind just won't let go at night. The sleep issues were back. And I just was cycling through the options inside that I had used 3 to 4 years ago, and they weren't making a dent. And so to me, it felt like the only choice was to try to figure this out. And so GABA in particular, which you mentioned, is a inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's basically like a calming agent to your nervous system. I like to think of it like a weighted blanket for the whole body. Just warm and fuzzy if you have a lot of GABA. And your microbiome is supposed to make a decent amount of GABA, but of course, those of us under stress, those of us with gut issues, it's likely that we're not making what we need to. There's oral dosing problems. It's just not well absorbed, the molecule. And then every attempt to modify it, liposomal, all these other changes to it, they say in their marketing it should work. But I take inappropriate doses that I don't recommend to anybody of anything. 4 or 5, 10 times whatever the bottle has in it, just to see what would happen. And they weren't doing what the marketing said they would do. And so I was like, this doesn't make sense. Why is this not making sense? And so I had a good friend, Dr. Morgan Camp. He's a MD integrative guy who had social anxiety issues. And he turned me on to Mulungu. And he also was turning me on to this idea that, hey, there's absorption techniques through the skin. And this absolutely made sense immediately to me, which is that if we have a compromised gut is a catch-all term for a lot of organs, actually. And each of those organs has their specific role. It's a pretty important role. Should you be marginally deficient in a few of those organs, the mathematics, because I'm a nerd, I basically got a math degree. The mathematics are you start losing like huge percentages of your capacity to neutralize toxins, your ability to digest food and absorb the nutrients from the food. And if you keep stacking just even 20%, just say you're stressed. Just say the kids are going back to school. It's a little nutty as you come up with a new routine. Your stomach acid production is just down 20%. Your digestive enzymes are just down 20%. Well, that's going to cause a microbiome issue down 20%. And it just kind of keeps stacking. And so what he was saying, which I think is kind of what a lot of our product lineup is about, is like, how do we build products that adopt or assume that your gut is not functioning correctly? How can we go around it? How can we work with it? And so the topical application of GABA was that idea with Dr. Camp. And again, I try everything, and I put like 2 or 3 spurts of this stuff on, and I was like, whoa. This is what GABA, according to the papers, the books I've read, this is what this feels like. Wow. And so that was kind of where I got really stoked and really into it.
For so many people in the world, they're not realizing that their gut has absorption issues, and they don't realize their options. And so knowing that those are things that we need to take into consideration, and knowing that there will be times in our life when we need to go a deeper level, right, Steven? What worked for us before is not going to work for us this time. And this is maybe a larger stress, a bigger impact. Maybe it triggers younger attachment insecurities that before we've never needed to address at this level. But what some people may see as a setback, I see that you really took on as, this is an opportunity for me to go the next step and really learn what next layer my gut needs for support, rather than just giving in and giving up. And in the process, you've learned some really valuable insights that have changed a lot of people's lives as a result. So I know that you use that GABA cream now, but you've also mixed it with theanine. Why? Tell me why.
Well, there's a lot of research on L-theanine and sort of shifting the brain to alpha wave states, as well as reducing perceived stress. And so theanine just seemed like a natural additive, because everything that I because I read the research journals, but I also go on like Reddit and the deep, dark areas of the web. And I want to know who's using other supplements inappropriate. Like a lot of theanine supplements are 200 milligrams per capsule. And I was finding people that were dosing at 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 milligrams, sometimes even more. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. Again, same question. Why should we need so much? Maybe it's an absorption issue through the gut. And so that was the hypothesis on that one that I think also seemed to help. But so I have a number of ways that I think a little differently than I think someone who went through med school. And it's not good or bad. It's just different.
I think it's a very helpful combination. And because even of the different mechanisms of action that they have, it's a wonderful way to bring that support on both sides of the nervous system, where you've got the GABA, which is the inhibitory. So we're going to kind of offset glutamate, or the activating neurotransmitter, calm things down. And also the theanine really helps to block the effects of adrenaline. And the adrenaline is going to drive the nervous system, drive the enteric nervous system to that state of, we've got to be on, we can't relax. And for many people, I know that they report that when they take the theanine at bedtime, for example, for the first time, their thoughts stop racing. And those racing thoughts have kept them awake. And just with that theanine that allows the adrenaline to not kind of bind its receptors as well, they're able to feel that relaxation and fall asleep better. So knowing that the gut is hit hard with adrenaline, it's one of the primary targets of adrenaline, because when we are in stress and danger mode, our gut needs to change and it should not be digesting. And so to have that theanine on board for the enteric nervous system, I think is a wonderful combination. And then we also need to consider some of the other things that the gut will need, because that's not just all. It's going to also need support in the digestion, because now once we've been able to relax the nervous system in the gut, it needs support with having what it needs to digest things, right? And then magnesium, I think, is one of the other critical nutrients that a person can be taking to really help support their nervous system and their gut. How do you see the role of magnesium in the gut? And then we'll go into the actual digestive support that we might need to give our gut once we've been able to relax it as well.
So supplementing with magnesium is cheap. It's very effective. It's very safe. And I think it's kind of up there with the vitamin D of no-brainers in the Western world. Again, don't come to me if you're like, I want to just eat food and meditate and do yoga and be as healthy as I can be. Because I think if we embrace the level of toxins, if we embrace the level of technology that we all use, I think we're past that phase of this meat suit. I think we're going to need some supplemental stuff to deal with creating tolerance and abundance in the new Western world. And magnesium seems to be one of those things. And I was kind of shocked. I was shocked at the lack of research into magnesium. I was shocked into kind of like the lies and the manipulations in the supplement industry about which form is better and blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of all, once you read all the studies, it's kind of all meh. They're basically all the same bioavailability, shocking truth. They're all within 1% based on a bunch of research that they don't want you to actually read. But what the magnesium is bonded with does actually matter. And there are side effects to that. There are benefits actually as well. So certain magnesiums like magnesium malate can be up. They can be an upper because you're low in malic acid. More malic acid is going to be better mitochondrial function, and it could mean more energy. And so different magnesiums do play a big role in how you feel. And in knowing that, to me, is like having a better medicine cabinet at your house. You can reach in there. You can know that, hey, if I have magnesium oxide, that's really last case resort for constipation, because I'm going to have diarrhea if I'm off even just a little bit on that one. But you can have other forms like magnesium glycinate, which is the one that we make, that is the most safest tolerated for people with sensitivities as well as gut issues. And you get the bonus of glycine, which is super supportive for the nervous system. It's been shown to have you feel more rested in the morning when you wake up. It can help lower body temperature. And so glycine's awesome stuff. If you do have sleep issues, try 3 grams of glycine before bed. It can be very helpful.
I'm glad that you mentioned the attention that magnesium has not had and that they are reevaluating that. There was a very helpful article that was published in 2020 called Magnesium Status and Stress. And it was published in a journal called Nutrients. And it really revisited why stress and magnesium deficiency go together and create this vicious cycle where stress will create the magnesium deficiency. And then the magnesium deficiency will keep us in a state of stress. And it walked through the symptoms of what a person might have if they were deficient in magnesium. And one of them was gut spasms. And this idea around visceral hypersensitivity and feeling irritable and anxious. And I'm like, why isn't this information not more out there? Because people having those symptoms would not be the first to think of, oh, I have a magnesium deficiency. And so they're so connected, but in it also had a flow chart showing the different absorption challenges that we will have, where the amount of magnesium that we take in, only 30 to 50% of that is actually getting absorbed. So we're pooping out 50 to 70% of all the magnesium that we take anyway. But given that, say, the 30% that gets in.
Or it's being used by the microbiome.
Or it's being used by the microbiome, thank you. Of that actually gets in, most of that is not actually getting into the cells. So you can still have a normal or low blood level of magnesium. And if your blood level is low, how much more is it inside of your cells? Because that ratio of what's in your blood to what's in your cells, that's only like a 1% absorption into your cells. And when you think of all the magnesium that your brain needs, all the magnesium that your muscles use up when we're in activity all day, your bones, your gut, this is why, for me, it validates the fact that you're safe taking larger doses of magnesium than what has been the traditionally recommended amount. Because when I look at only 30% gets in, 1% of that 30% is actually getting into my cells. And I am frequently in times of stress, good and bad stress, but this is my life. And so why would I not support my body more with these nutrients? But there is a difference between magnesiums and how our gut or stomach tolerates them. Am I right? Is that been
1,000%? Yeah.
So what have you learned around which magnesium that we can take that would be better tolerated by a gut that already has issues?
Yeah, so there was a study on Crohn's disease patients who had a resection. So they basically had a certain level of their intestines cut out, and they gave them magnesium glycinate, and then they gave them magnesium oxide. And there was no complaints. There was no withdrawals or anything in the study related to the magnesium glycinate group. But 20 to 30% of the people in the oxide group withdrew or complained. And clinically, we should not be surprised by this. Most clinicians know that if you want to induce diarrhea or induce a bowel movement, magnesium oxide, it basically it draws a bunch of liquid, mostly water, into the gut, causing diarrhea. And if you're a sensitive individual like I am, and maybe people on this call are, that window of tolerance is extraordinarily small. And the consequences are 2 to 4 hours on the toilet, usually. And so you can be off by 100 milligrams and spend the next half of your day chained to a toilet. And so that doesn't work for me. I think it's important to know how to use that product. Magnesium citrate is the next most likely to cause diarrhea and explosions. Its tolerance is more like 200-ish milligrams. But again, citric acid can draw a bunch of liquid into the gut and then end up causing the diarrhea. Natural calm is the most common citrate. There's actually a radioisotope study on magnesium where they basically tag the magnesium with radioactive isotopes, and then they watch it all, and they did a bunch of different oxide, citrate, glycinate, and malate, I think. And their absorption, the bioavailability absorption was like between 24% and 23%. However, if you go to Natural Calm's website, they'll cite studies around urine excretion or fecal excretion. But to your point, Aimie, when you're measuring, I think your RBC number, so if you get a blood test from your doctor and you're like, I don't want the regular magnesium number, I want the red blood cell count, that's only 0.7%, I think, of all magnesium in your total body. The majority is stored in your brain, your bones, your muscles, your heart, and we don't have tests for that. And so studies that don't do the radioisotope method come up with these wild reasons why you should use them. And it doesn't seem to play out because, again, with citrate, you could end up with diarrhea. That might be what you want. But you could also induce stool softness in a more spontaneous bowel movement. Spontaneous meaning not explosive, but like more natural with glycinate, which is a different form of magnesium. And in order to induce diarrhea, I don't know what the number would be. I think it would have to be over 2,400 milligrams because I've tested pretty high numbers with glycinate. And in general, you'll have a softer, smoother bowel movement with the magnesium glycinate without the laxative effect coming from the osmotic, which means the liquid coming into the gut. Is it the more magnesium that's around the nerves in the gut that finally lets it go? Is it the glycine that you're low in that actually allows the nerves in the gut to kind of slow down and let go? No one really knows that question yet, but I think it's really important for you to know that they all have differential effects, and it's not about the dose of magnesium, it's about what it's bound to. So you'll see a bunch of people that say magnesium L-threonate is the only one that crosses the blood-brain barrier. That's not true. Glycinate does as well. It's just they did one study where they showed it, and so now they can claim it all the time. And so if you try mag-threonate, which is significantly more expensive, and you dose it up and you don't feel anything, just let it go. It's not worth it. Most people do great with glycinate, and they can do higher dosages of it, and they'll feel the brain effects and the calming effects as well.
So fascinating. And what I love about your experience, my experience, is it really just shows how much we need to personalize this and find out what's best for our own body.
100%.
And empowering people to feel that they can take those choices, that this is their body, this is their journey, and to feel empowered to become the experts in their own nervous system, as I like to say. I do want to swing back around to the actual support for our gut for digestion. Do we need to be taking enzymes? What enzymes? There's a lot of information out there. So what's the scoop on digestive issues, and yes or no on enzymes?
Yeah. So I think there's a few things, again, that people have really been misled over the last 10 years. And one of those is that diet is medicine. Diet is just part of the equation. It does not really matter if you're eating locally caught everything, locally farmed, whatever, if you cannot break that food down. If you can't actually digest that food, whether it's kale and salmon or chicken or tofu or whatever you choose to eat, if you're not able to break that down, it's going to be causing byproducts that will encourage overgrowth of certain organisms you do not want in your gut. It will be causing a dysbiotic microbiome. And so there are actual consequences to just being like, I don't want to think about what I'm about to say, which is like, it's fine. I eat really healthy. It's very organic. I'm fine. There are serious consequences that can arise if you haven't sort of like thought through, can I actually break this food down and can I assimilate this food? One of those inconvenient truths is that the digestive organs age just like every other organ. It's really inconvenient, but like our eyesight goes, our ovaries go, our testes go, our pancreas, our intestines, our stomach, those are aging as well. And so whether you're under stress, and when you're under stress, like for me, I was living most of my life with a very low HRV, which I think correlates to a low vagal tone, which then also correlates to a high sympathetic and pretty much no parasympathetic. Your capacity to make stomach acid, your capacity to make digestive enzymes goes down a lot because your body doesn't feel safe enough to rest and digest. And when that happens, again, you're sacrificing, 10%, 20%, 40%. And you can feel that, right? Like when you travel, at least for me, I get travel tummy a lot, right? The stress of parking and this, everyone's yelling at me and got to get on the plane. The dogs are barking at the other dogs. And doesn't matter almost what I eat. I'll have slight uneasiness, right? And that's sympathetic dominance during a period of time in which I've also consumed food, even if it's really safe food. And so all these things are kind of stacked against our gut. And there's one powerhouse, I think, that can turn the tide for these types of normal Western problems, and that's your digestive enzyme function. They are the little scissors that kind of come in and they chop up your food into smaller and smaller particles. Because if you don't get the chopping mechanism, your gut rejects it. It's like, nope, that's not the right size. You cannot come. You can't come in. And so without the enzymes, you won't get the nutrients. And then, of course, that sets up for even more nutrient deficiency. And like you talked about, the correlation to even worse, mental health as well as central nervous system health and everything. So enzymes are very safe. They're a very practical way to kind of just have an insurance policy that you're breaking down whatever you choose to eat. And then if you're under stress, you can always take more because the upper limit is theoretically, we don't really know, but there's cancer groups that take 160 capsules a day on an empty stomach. And so if you're like, I'm very stressed and I'm going to take 6 with this meal, you're not even dipping your toe into the water of scariness. You're just supporting yourself that day. So the beautiful thing about the enzymes is that they're also powerful enough to change digestive issues. So if you're dealing with bloating or food sensitivities right now, diarrhea, constipation, sort of IBS related issues, at least Holozymes is strong enough to modify the food structure, help you absorb it faster, and hopefully starve out the bugs or starve out whatever issue is causing the motility problem, so that you get the nutrients you wanted in the first place that you paid for at Whole Foods, but also you make sure that the hippie community is not being overrun by the unwanteds down there. And so I just see them as a no-brainer, especially if we're looking at longevity, health span, performance, those types of things. I think it's this idea of this continued focus towards aligning yourself with what creates tolerance and abundance, just accepting that the traumas have happened, the vaccine happened, it all happened. It's already done. You cannot change it. And this idea of I'm just a breakthrough away, or I'm just a better diet away. Anything that's exclusionary that doesn't create resiliency, in my opinion, I think is something that I'm going to be talking about for the next 5+ years. That if we try to eliminate the stress from this news source or the stress from that thing, some of that is positive. There's positivity towards understanding, cutting out negative influences, negative foods, things like this. But I hope that this message, I hope what I can do is, tell you that through a lot of lifestyle practices, as well as a lot of supplemental things, you can create resiliency so that you can go out to the restaurant with your friends or with your family. You can eat sugar and wine during the holidays. You can have some gluten from time to time, unless you're an absolute celiac who is in a bad place. I think there's a lot more damage that is done when we're trying to be so strict all the time, or we're trying to assume that our body's supposed to be natural, and the natural way to do it is without support. And I think both of those are really missing what's happening.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Biology of Trauma podcast. If you would like to know more about the link between your gut and nervous system, then I have resources for you in the show notes. You will find the products mentioned in this episode: GABA, theanine, magnesium, and the digestive enzymes. I will also have links to related podcast episodes. You'll want to look at episode 94, Nutrition for Trauma Recovery, 3 Superfoods to Calm Adrenaline and Anxiety. That one was with Luis Mojica. Episode 75 is on fear stored in the gut, attachment, relational trauma, and solutions for the hypersensitive gut. That is a training that I did. And I also have some YouTube videos, Unlocking Trauma's Biochemical Secrets, a guide to serotonin, GABA, and mental health with Trudy Scott. I have a video on the one vitamin that helps counter trauma's damage to our digestive tract, and a video on the attachment IBS connection. I am here to save you time and money by bringing you practical information that will help you accelerate the trauma healing journey. So please take a moment to subscribe or leave a review if you've already just subscribed. Your reviews and feedback are how I know how to improve this podcast, bring you great content, and help you find information that will change your life. I'm your host, Dr. Aimie, and until next episode, lots of love.